got in the boat. We've survived the storm, and the boat continues over to the Gentile region. This is no longer Jewish territory. It's on the other side of the Sea of Galilee, and he ends up in the region of the Gerasenes. Why this visit? It doesn't say. All it says back in verse 35 of chapter 4 is that Jesus just says, let us go over to the other side. He doesn't give a reason. He doesn't stop. He just says, let us go. And the disciples go. We must do it. So they do it. And why would Jesus want to go to an area where, well, the prophecy of a Messiah would be something that they didn't believe in, they didn't care about, they didn't want to know. But he chose to go, and we'll find out why, I think, as time goes on. Okay, so the story begins. They arrive, and as soon, if we look in verse 2, when Jesus got out of the boat, a man who was possessed with an evil spirit came to meet him. All right? Now, this man, it says, lived in the tombs and the hills. And as I told you before, there's lots of things that Mark does not say as well as what he does. And this passage is full of things that he does not say, but are very poignant if you look for them. He lived in the graveyards and the tombs. What do you think he lived on in a graveyard? A man who did not work, who was possessed. That's not nice. He was a man who was trapped in this body with demons inside him. He was described in this passage as unbindable. They had tried. Presumably this was a man that was known to them, because at the end of the passage he's told to go home to your friends and family. So he must have been someone that was known to them, and obviously had become deemed possessed over time. And they had tried to bind him when he went bonkers, and they could not, because he seemed to have supernatural strength. I personally cannot break chains with my hands. I cannot snap metal shackles off my ankles. He could. He was supernaturally strong. The description of torment, it says day and night he cried out, day and night. He wasn't permitted sleep. He also attacked himself. He said it cut himself with sharp stones. So he was physically attacking his own body, and his mental state was distraught, and it was unrelenting. And if you look at the account that Luke gives about this, it says it had been going on for a long time. And this man was naked. So imagine the picture of this man, demented, slashed, filthy, unkempt. Horrible sight he would have been. And this man was free and running around in the hills and the graveyard above the towns. That was the picture that we get from this situation when Jesus turns up. And note, Jesus did not seek out the man. The man came to Jesus, and he was in a hurry. He ran. He ran to Jesus in verse 6. He ran, and he was loud. He was shouting at the top of his voice in verse 7. And he knew who Jesus was. He fell on his knees. Now, when you fall on your knees in something, that is deference. You fall on your knees. You don't just do it to any old person. You do it to someone that you think deserves that. He fell on his knees. And he addressed Jesus by name and title. So why did this man behave in this way? Now, I have to say, when I was younger, I used to read this passage and I thought it was because the demons knew who Jesus was and were immediately cowed by him, and then sort of came and sort of did all the begging bit. I think actually it's not. This is more, if you look at it, this is a fight. A fight. This is an attempt at a fight. Okay, and I'll tell you why. Firstly, the demon drove the man to Jesus. It wasn't the man's volition. It was the demon that drove him there. The demon took him to Jesus. And it was meant to be intimidating. Filthy, naked, screaming man running at you. If you saw that out in the street, if you saw someone do that out in the street, well, your instinct would be to get the heck out of the way. You would be frightened. You would be very worried by that approach. It was meant to be intimidating. And then the use, when he got there, he dived on his knees. Now, just that physical attack that was threatened, that physical attack that had been manifest to the previous villagers who had tried to bind him, did not occur on Jesus. He got to within striking distance and then fell on his knees and then shouted his name and title. That's what he did. Now, apparently, according to that time, if you had the knowledge of someone's name, full name, and used it, it was a way of controlling them, a way of saying, I'm superior to you. It still works today. Have you, or were you as ever a child, been told when you do something wrong, Kevin John Gilderson, if you do not stop right away, there will be trouble. Not Kevin, but when you say Kevin John Gilderson, that person, my mother, knew me intimately, and she used my name in full to make clear that this was something that she was going to use to control me, to sort of make me behave properly. It got my full attention. And this spirit was trying to do this. It was not deference and sort of, oh, thank you, you're Jesus, you're the Most High Son of God. It was not nice. It was an attempt to intimidate and control Jesus. The spirit had knowledge of Jesus, but absolutely no faith or love for him. Absolutely none. He also demanded Jesus swear not to torture him. If you look at the statement, it says, he shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? Swear to God." It is not a request. He demands that Jesus does not torture me. Do not torture me. He was trying to control him again by demanding. If you know, in the presence of people who shout, if you ever watch a film with a bank robbery, what the robbers always do is shout. People are cowed in the presence of shouting and people behaving abnormally, but loud voices intimidate people. And this is what he was trying to do. He's looking for a fight. This demon is looking for a fight. Now, bear in mind, a demon comes from the devil and he's having a pop. How does Jesus respond? Well, it says here, for Jesus had said, "Come out of this man, you evil spirit." Jesus had quietly instructed this mad lunatic rushing at him at full pelt, who in full recognition of what was going on, he said, "Come out of this man, you evil spirit." Just contrast this. Mad, screaming, loony, sort of mad, crazy person coming at you. Jesus, still, controlled, quiet, no fear. That was how Jesus addressed this man who was coming to him at full pelt. And then something strange occurs. All right? Jesus engages the demon in conversation. Now, this apparently is the only time, as I understand it, in the Bible where Jesus engages with the spirits. Every other occasion, it's come out of this man. There's no argument. There's no sort of discussion as to about what's going to happen or next. It's just you out. And it happens. But this does not. Now, Jesus has said the same words, but then the demon remains in it and he engages him in conversation. Why is this? Why is this of track compared to other results? Right, first of all, let's remember the disciples are watching. I reckon they're still gibbering in the boat. I reckon they're in the boat, watching loony guy come down. But they're watching. The herdsmen who look after the pigs are watching. It says the story. They witnessed it. They all went back. They were watching. And so, done with this audience in mind, he asks the demon, "What is your name?" Now, interestingly, if you are saying, "I know your name and I'm trying to control you," Jesus turns it completely around and says, "Well, what's your name?" Like I don't know it. Demon tries to control. Jesus is in control, and he just says, "Well, all right then, what's your name?" And he gives this answer. "My name is Legion, for we are many." A Roman legion is 6,000 soldiers. I don't think this is what the guy was not claiming there's 6,000 was in here, but what he was saying is there's lots of us and we're ready to fight. It was a vague response as well. It wasn't his proper title. It was just a collective noun for the things that were inside him. And it was not a genuine response to a question. He was trying again to deflect Jesus. But Jesus was demonstrating something of his own. He was just demonstrating that he knew what the demon was. He knew that the demon also knew that he knew Jesus. The way he gives it says, he says, "What do you want?" The demon says to Jesus, "What do you want?" He falls on his knees, begs, "Don't torture me," or demands, "Don't torture me," begs, then starts to beg for, "Don't send us away from the area. Don't throw us into the abyss." That's what the term is used in Luke 8. He says, "Don't throw us into the abyss." Jesus was demonstrating this power that he had by that question. He also demonstrated that the demon need his permission to do anything. Anything. Beg, says the demon. "Please give us permission to go into the pigs." The demon knew he was not going to be allowed to stay in this body. Jesus had already commanded him to come out. He's now trying to negotiate. And he needs permission to do it. Jesus demonstrates this because the demon gives himself away when he talks to him. And when he does do this, when it does occur, everybody who is present watches, sees the outcome and the demon's real intentions. Why was that demon so determined to stay in the man's body? The human body is a weapon. You are extraordinary. Each of us is extraordinary. We have the power within our physical bodies to do things that are good and harmful. If you are possessed by something that wants to use your body for harm, just look how evil people can do terrible things with this physical body that God gives. If you're just a demon with no body or entity, perhaps you're limited in what you can do. He wanted to stay in the body. He was causing havoc to that surrounding towns who knew what he was like. You imagine the fear that guy generated. He was loving it. I'm in charge. I can do whatever I like. I can smash this guy up. A person made in the image of God. I can do what I like. No, he didn't want that. He did not want to be cast out. The phrase, "the devil loves idle hands," because the devil does like to be active, badly active, and demon hates to be inactive. If you are thrown into this abyss, which is spiritual prison for demons, according to other sources, then you're inactive, you're idle, you're kicking your heels. You're not in charge anymore. So he wanted to stay in the man, but it wasn't going to happen. So he said, please, can we stay in the area? Let us go into the pigs. Let us go into the pigs. Seems like a bit of a rough exchange. A human body for lots of pigs, but at least it would have meant physical body. At least it meant they would have stayed. At least it could have meant that perhaps when Jesus had gone, he could move on and do something else again. So we asked this. Begs, please let us go into the pigs. And surprisingly, Jesus says, all right then. He gave permission. He gave permission in verse 13 for the demons to leave the man and go into the pigs. And it did. Occupied 2,000. That's a lot of pigs. 2,000 of them. It occupied those and immediately run down the cliff, over the cliff, into the Sea of Galilee and were drowned. It demonstrated what its real intentions were. Destruction. It destroyed all of those pigs. Now, I want to make it clear, absolutely clear. Jesus did not make a deal with the demon, i.e., you can have the man if we can have the pigs. That is not what is going on here. No deal. No, the end, I know this because the end result was the destruction of the pigs. The host that they had been granted access to was in minutes destroyed. They had no more host. They were, in fact, taken out and put in the abyss. But before they did it, they demonstrated what their purpose was. Jesus was totally in control. There was no deals done here. So, hurrahs all round, yes? Demon dispensed with, safety and security restored for the surrounding villages, man restored to full health and sanity, and you've got a miraculous person in your presence and all the potential that means. Hurrah! Not a chance. The herdsmen who had witnessed all of this go off to report. It must have been a jaw-dropping report when you got there. What? All of them? 2,000 are dead? Yes. So they come out. The locals come out to see what this could be true. And it is. When they get there, they find Jesus. As promised, the guy that steps out of the boat. They find a demon-possessed, previously demon-possessed man, now quietly sitting, dressed, in his right mind, engaged with conversation with Jesus and presumably the disciples as well. And 2,000 dead pigs bobbing in the sea. Notice that this is twice confirmed by the herdsmen. Verse 10 and verse 14 and 16, they go off, give the report, the guys come, and then they confirm the report again in the presence of Jesus and all the others. And there's the evidence. How do the people respond to this miraculous event? Well, in verse 15, it says, they were afraid. They knew power had been exercised and they were afraid. And then the crazy thing is, they pleaded with Jesus to leave their region. Please, leave. Why were they afraid? Well, they saw confirmation of an awesome power that had done what men were unable to do. They could not bind the demon or the person. They just could not. And yet Jesus, at a single word, had freed the man. They saw the power. They recognized the power, and they were frightened of it. I also want to note, if you owned 2,000 pigs, it was your livelihood and everything like that, and there was a guy who had, by confirmation of witnesses, been the result of your destruction of your livelihood, then I reckon you might have been a bit cross. But note, Jesus was not physically intimidated or threatened. No one got angry with Jesus. They just said, please leave. They knew power when they saw it, and they did not want that power turned on them. But they could not abide the thought of Jesus being in their region, this uncontrollable power. They became more afraid of Jesus than they had of the man who was demon-possessed. They didn't see Jesus as a benefit, they saw him as a threat. They didn't see a freed man, they saw 2,000 dead pigs. They were outsiders. The truth had not been revealed to them. Their hearts showed that they were fearful and they were just terrified of Jesus. So interestingly, the people were happier with a demon-possessed man in their midst with their pigs, rather than a freed man and no pigs. The people were more afraid than they had been than they were of the demon-possessed man. They were outsiders. So how does Jesus respond to this request? No argument. None. Just turns round and gets back in the boat to do exactly as they had requested. It looks a bit like Jesus is abandoning the people by following their request. But this was not so. Because then, as Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. Different type of begging from the demons. Don't send us away. Don't torture us. No, all about them. This one was, beg, let me come with you. This was an insider. Faith had revealed Christ to him, and he wanted to be with Jesus. There's nothing here for me. I want to be with you. Interesting. How does Jesus respond to this request? No. You can't come. This was not an exercise in gentle dissuading. Oh, well, we're a little bit full. The boat's a bit, perhaps we haven't got enough provision. No. It was, no, you're not coming. I don't want you to come. I will not permit you to come, it says. Jesus did not let him. Why did he not let him? He was exhorted to go home to your family and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. Go and tell was the instruction. And the man took him at his word. He went back to the Decapolis, 10 cities. That means literally 10 cities. And he just went on a road trip. And he just went around telling people exactly what had happened to them, how much had happened to him. And it says, the last line, and all the people were amazed. Notice when Jesus talked to him, he said, go home to your family and tell how much the Lord has done for you. Not how much I've done for you. God. Jesus equates himself with God. This happened because God did it. It happened because I am God. So, let's just contrast. The people made an evil request. They rejected Christ, and he acceded to that request. The man made a godly request because he accepted Christ and wanted to be with him, but Jesus denied this. Why? Because Jesus was giving the man as a gift to the region. Even though he had been asked to leave, he left something of himself behind. Therefore, he had not abandoned the people of the region, even though they didn't want him there. He went back, he left something behind. And actually later on in Mark 7, the last part of Mark 7, he went back there. Doesn't say if he met the man again, but when he went back there, the people knew who he was. They didn't plead with him to lead the region then. The man became Jesus' mouthpiece and evangelist throughout the 10 cities. The man had true faith. So how do we apply this today? I suspect, well, I've never actually come across someone who is what I would call demon-possessed. It's not something common in our world, and sometimes people would dismiss this story as, well, it happened then, perhaps it was mental health, perhaps it was something else, whatever, I don't know, but this doesn't happen today, does it? Oh, yes, it does. If you talk to people from parts of Africa and so on, this is very real. Missionaries and people who go abroad to different parts of the world will tell you that this is real. And if it's in the Bible and it's there to teach you a lesson, then it's not something I think we can readily dismiss. But I don't want to big it up either. I don't, the films love portraying all sorts of things like this, but it's not so. But it is something that we should not ignore, because the devil does like to use people to further his causes. The point of this passage is to demonstrate, though, Jesus' power over evil, particularly the works of the devil. Satan is always evil, always destructive, always uncaring. He is not a nice guy with a pointy stick and a red forked tail that the world likes to portray him as a fun figure. He is not. He is a malevolent, evil being whose sole purpose is to make sure as many people go down with him as possible. The world actually, would you believe it, doubts the existence of the devil more than they doubt the existence of God. We are currently in what I would call a godless society and heading further away from him every day. And yet people still think the devil's silly and not real, even less so than they do of Jesus. The thing is, you do not fear what you do not think is real or powerful or, well, it just is a figure of fun. It'd be like saying, oh, I'm terrified of the tooth fairy. No one's terrified of the tooth fairy because it's just a tooth fairy. The devil has conjured up this appearance that he is not anything to get worried about. But he is. God knows that good and evil does exist. People know that good and evil does exist. You look at your news and you will see God, good and evil at work every day. It's also something as well. The media and the films like to portray God and the devil in a battle for supremacy. Like it's a war, a constant war. It is not. Look at the way Jesus dealt with the devil in the form of this demon. Hurtle, 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 stop, dead, no attack, nothing at all. Begged, unable to do anything without permission. There was no battle here. Jesus was in total control, had total power over this demon, and did exactly what he needed to do. There was no fight. there was no fight. Jesus' power over the devil is absolute. And evil recognizes this. So if this is the case, how are we going to respond to the teaching of this passage? Right, are we going to plead for Jesus to leave our lives? Or are we going to plead to get in the boat with him? Are we going to tell people how much the Lord has done for us and the mercy he has given us? Or are we going to fixate on the dead pigs, the things of a worldly life? I have good news. Unlike this story, today, unlike the freedman, we can get into the boat and tell people about Jesus. He had to stay in his region for a purpose. Jesus invites us all, insiders, faith in God, Christ, to get into the boat with him and travel our lives with him. And then on the way, he'll say, now I want you to get out the boat and tell people. If you went out and delivered leaflets on that street over the weekend, you got out of the boat and you did what Jesus asked. That is what he asked. Go and tell people how much the Lord has done for you and how much mercy he's had on you. So I exhort us to be good sailors and evangelists. Thank you for listening. Amen.